Welcome back to MMHC. We have a very exciting episode for you guys today. We're very excited to get to it. We wanted to just do a quick intro with maybe some shout-outs. Eddie, you got anything for me?
The only thing I have is that every episode's exciting. I don't know why we even... Just kidding. Yes, I do have a shout out. Today's episode, we're going to give a shout out to today's episode sponsor is Unplug Technology on Instagram. They reached out to us recently because of Justin, because of his TED Talk that he did recently on social media addiction, on internet use. They really liked what he had to say. I mean, I like what Justin has to say most of the time, except when it has to do with the Broncos and the Raiders. But they like what he had to say. And because of it, they're a company that's working on helping people scale back their internet and their technology use. They have this really cool tag. I don't have it with me right now in front of me while we're recording. It's on my keys. It's basically a tag that helps you monitor or lessen the amount that you're using your phone. So what you do is you have the app, you put in the kind of schedule that you want. So for me, I think I have it like during the workday, 7:45 to 3:45. I have a set schedule, and basically what it does is I'm not able to use like Instagram, Twitter, things like that, social media, TikTok, unless I have the tag right there with me, and it makes me have to scan the tag on my phone before I can even use it. And then even after I scan it, I can only use my phone for 5 minutes before it locks the apps again. So it's been really helpful in trying to get me to not use my phone as much, not use technology as much. The first day I used it, I noticed how much I reach for my phone when I'm bored and try to grab it right away and like go on social media. Thankfully my keys weren't next to me, so I wasn't able to use social media as much. It's been really helpful. Wanted to give them a shout out. They've been kind enough to give us a discount code for all our listeners. If you're interested, if you want to scale back on your social media and your technology use, all you have to do is go to www.unplug.com. Unplug is spelled UNPLUQ. Again, that's UNPLUQ.com. And at checkout, you can use the discount code MMHC20 to get 20% off. I think it's been really helpful since I've been using it. It's still on my keys, and I definitely noticed that very first day I used my phone a lot less. So I think it's worth a shot if you're trying to use your phone a lot less.
Cool. I like it. And the TED Talk is up to over 11,000 views.
I saw that, yeah.
Cool. That was pretty cool.
I checked it the other day.
I don't check it obsessively or anything, but...
You should.
I do. Well, one of the things we love on this show the most is being able to tell stories. And I was just telling the people in this podcast here that when I was in medical school, the most impactful thing for me was actually getting to hear the stories of people who had mental health issues like schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder. So that's one of the things we would like to try and do on this show more. I always just felt weird because most of the people I know with those things were my patients, and I didn't want to just be like, hey, take your pills, and also, do you want to come on my podcast? That seemed like an ethical violation to me. So it never really happened. But
I would have reported you if you did that.
You narc. You totally would have. So luckily we had a recent listener, a new fan of the show, reach out to us and very straightforward and confidently ask if he could come on the show and tell his story. So today we have a very special guest who goes by the name of Isaac Salisbury, and we'll ask him if there's any relation to the steak guy. I'm sure he probably gets that all the time. And it's cheesy, I know. I'm just a cheesy guy. But just to give you a little bio on who he is and what he does, he obtained his bachelor's degree from Thomas College, where he was a part of the National Honor Society. He's worked as a peer support specialist in the state of Maine. He also worked as a Portland Sea Dogs ticket office associate, which I'm very excited to hear more about the Sea Dogs. And he currently works for Gnome Landscaping. He also has his own podcast where he talks about disc golf in the Maine area called the Pine Tree Disc Golf Podcast. He does a lot of disc golf. He also does some DoorDash to make some extra moolah, and he is marrying the love of his life, Ariana, in September. So please welcome onto the show Mr. Isaac the Steak Man Salisbury.
Woo! You know, it's so funny because my nickname in the main disc golf scene is Steaks. And I am not joking at all. Everybody in the main disc golf scene really thinks that my name isn't Isaac, it's Steaks. So good guess. That's really, really cool. I was like, oh my god, there's no way you actually just guessed that. That's cool.
That's hilarious. I guess.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm like, Steaks. Oh, I've never heard that before.
Well, Isaac, welcome on the show. It's
Thank
so
you.
nice to have you here.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
What a nickname. I'm sorry.
It's a good one.
That's dope. That is a good nickname.
It's pretty sweet.
Like, if you imagine, like, putting that on a shirt, like, that's a dope nickname to have, like, on a shirt. Like, if you're making, like, the t-shirt jerseys, like, for, like, adult softball, that's a dope one. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I have one that says "Raise the Stakes," so that is
Hell
a thing.
yeah.
So it happens.
Oh, I can tell our senses of humor are going to mash up perfectly.
Oh,
So, Isaac, I know you told us a little bit about how you came to find MMHC, but tell the listeners, like, how did you find this show, and why did you want to come on here and tell your mental health story?
yeah, great question. So I was going through a little bit of a rough patch with my diagnosis, bipolar, and I just kind of felt like I needed to do a little more research on what this diagnosis really means to be able to get better. Of course, I really do know what my diagnosis is, but I just kind of felt like I needed to do more research in the moment. So on Spotify, I clicked on my phone and I was like, all right, let's put in bipolar and depression in Spotify. And you guys came up. And right from the get-go, there was a nice music starting it. And then I was like, all right, give this a shot. And I fell in love with just like listening to what you guys had to say. It wasn't anything that was too like really demanding or like this is what it means. It was open-ended. And it was like a conversation. I wanted to keep like talking to you guys when I was listening to it. So I was like, I bet they have a link tree on their Instagram, and I went there and I emailed you guys pretty straightforward, and here I am. So I'm pretty pumped.
I like to think of myself as the one that makes the information easy to understand, like it is a conversation. So I'm glad you reached out, Isaac. I'm glad you want to keep the conversation going. I think it takes a lot of courage to want to share your story, and I don't want to, like, we have a decent amount of listeners, so for you to want to open up to anybody who's listening, anybody who may be in the same boat where they want to find some help and they reach the podcast, I think we've talked about it, Justin, like the way people get information now is way different than it was, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I found myself when I was in Japan, like we went to a lot of Buddhist temples, and I took my phone out and I started to look up like Buddhist podcasts just so I could understand Buddhism a little more, because I'm not that familiar with it. And like we just try to find information in different ways. So I think it's really cool. Like you've used the technology we have nowadays to find this new information, and we connected. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, it really is.
So give it to us. Tell us the story. And and even when you reached out to us, I wanted to ask about this too. You had a whole like professionally done video for a hospital system where you were able to tell your story a little bit. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, my brother made it actually. It was my brother who put that together. He's a film and photography major out of Ithaca, and he ended up putting that together for me. So it was great.
Shout out to Brother Steaks.
Yeah, bro steak.
Bro steak.
So yeah, start from the beginning, and we might interrupt you just to get more details and things like that. But yeah, tell us how this all started. Tell us your journey.
Absolutely. So I just want to start at one of the quotes I had when I was just starting to get really kind of in a spot where I was getting sick, and it was, if you apply yourself and you want to get better, you will get better. I found that early on to be something I stuck to in the hospital bed, to my bed, to walking outside with my dad, getting the cobwebs out if I was trying to get something going, like a day at school. So back to the beginning, I was a senior in high school where I loved everything there was to high school, and I also loved all my friends. I was in a good spot. I was making good grades, and basically it was probably my day before the first day of high school in senior year. I had a golf match, and I just noticed something wasn't going right. And what I mean by that is I was just in a spot where I didn't know what was going on. And I never felt that before. Going back a few years, I've never had a mental health diagnosis. I've never had anything that was really in the fact that I had a diagnosis at all. So I didn't know what was happening. And so a lot of the times when I was in that situation at this golf match, I was like, what's wrong? Because it was not like I have a broken bone. It's not like I have a bloody nose. Something in my head didn't seem right. And so I played that golf match in Maine, and I won that golf match. And I ended up being 1-0 in my high school career. So that was cool. But afterwards, the golf match ended, and it was the first day of high school the next day. And granted, I still was just kind of in a bad spot. I was really scatterbrained. I just didn't feel myself. Isaac wasn't there anymore. And I couldn't really put a nail on it. I was like, I didn't do anything to make this happen. So why am I acting so frantic? Why am I acting so sad? Why am I acting so angry all of a sudden? So come forward to midway through the day, I just didn't feel right. And I had a golf practice or a golf match at the end of the day. I had to end up going home from the golf practice. I didn't feel like it was something I could control. I just needed to get out of there, and it felt like I had to do everything I could to take a left in my car to make sure I was going to get home. I had to convince myself to go left. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I can't figure it out. I get home, I fall into my mother's arms, I say something's wrong and I need to fix it. I don't know it, but something's wrong. My mom, confused, concerned, didn't know what to do, runs me to urgent care. At urgent care, I get there, they're kind of like, so are you hearing voices? Do you feel like you're just confused? Do you just not? And I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I want to make it better, and whatever it takes, I want that to happen. So 2 ER visits later, next 2 days, back to back. I didn't sleep for 48 hours. Doctors were leading to maybe schizophrenia when I first was admitted into a hospital in Maine. So they weren't really sure what was going on. It was pretty intense. So I'm in the hospital, and it's like any other hospital, but I'm in there and I don't know where I am. I'm confused what's going on. I'm confused where I am, who I am. I've lost touch with, to be frank. And when I come down to it, I just didn't feel good. And I wanted to feel better. And there were hints and moments in the hospital where I felt like myself for a second. And I got that like almost excited feeling. I'm like, oh, maybe I am gonna get better. Maybe I will feel better. I'm not a bad person. I always felt like I was a bad person. That was my thing I would go to. Was like, I'm a bad person. I'm not meant to be here. And throughout all of this, I wanted to keep going. I could see like a little light when I was there. I was like, it's there. I know I can get better, but I just got to keep going. My parents didn't miss a day visiting me. They knew that I was there. They were not confident I would graduate high school. They weren't confident that I would, keep going in this journey. It was just like I was in such a state of confusion that they didn't know what was next for me. So yeah, it's pretty heavy. It's a lot of like bad, like things weren't looking good when I was in the hospital in Maine and in Lewiston. So I got out after 3 weeks, and I took about 2 months off of high school, and I went to a program called the PEER program. It stands for Portland Identification and Early Referral. I will say they are the reason why I am working a job, graduated high school, graduated college. without them, I wouldn't have gotten that next step, because I would get out of the hospital and then be like, what next? There's such a good avenue to go from hospital to transition back to society. I mean, without it, I don't know. It's something I think about a lot. Just like, whoa, what if they weren't there? Yeah. So they had some family groups I go to on once a week basis. I had a counselor I go to, and there was a psychiatrist. I got on the right meds. I got going, and I finally walked through the doors of Freeport High School again for the first time after about 3 months. And my mom parked the car by the parking lot, sat there and cried, and didn't think I'd make it 5 minutes, and I made it through that whole block. Yeah. And that was spectacular. I was able to make it through the block. I didn't say anything in that class, but I was present. I was there. I was able to just like go for it and be there. I had hugs from my friends. I still couldn't really feel emotion very well. I was kind of like, all right, this is cool. Mm-hmm. Like, all right, I'm here. I'm supposed to be here. And I felt like it was a really cool place to be again. And I honestly don't think I missed a day. I kept going. I only had one class each day, but I'd go to those classes and they were able to get me to graduate Freeport, and they were able to get me to graduate. I went to college and I got back to a good spot. It wasn't easy. I mean, I still feel effects of bipolar. I was diagnosed with psychosis in the hospital, where I was basically just in a state of confusion, lost touch of reality. And I still take antipsychotics. I take antidepressants. I take lithium, which has been a new med for me that's worked really well. Lithium has been awesome. I took Depakote for about 5 years, and it kind of wore off for a little while, and that was kind of rough. So I ended up having to go to something new, and it's been good. I've been enjoying that. So yeah, that's the bulk of the story. I went through a really rough patch for about a year, and I looked so... That's another thing, is I have a picture of myself in Ithaca visiting my brother. I looked just like pale. Like, it looked like I was a different person. And I go to now, and I'm amazed of how vibrant I am. And I'm amazed of how excited I am to go to these places like Bittersweet Ridge, a disc golf course, and see all my buddies. It's like something it happened, but it feels like it wasn't that significant to bump me down to not want to keep doing this. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I wanted to share this story, because I know there are people going through these type of things that are listening to this podcast too, and I want them to feel better, and I want them to have that shared story and to be able to feel like they're not alone. Yeah. Because I definitely felt like I was alone there for a little bit, and it was very, very frightening. So, So if you apply yourself and you want to get better, you will get better. And I really emphasize that. It's not over. You will get there if you apply yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Isaac. It's so real. I think of I if you've heard on the show, I'm out of high school, and we get times where we have kids in crisis, similar to like you were explaining, something is just off and they need a higher level of care and support. And hearing your story of I feel like I missed that part of the only parts I think about are in the moment crisis and then first day back at school, but I don't think about the in-between part, and even the in-between part of physically from the parking lot to the front door. That's a huge piece that I don't even think about. So getting to hear that from you, it's all these things are running through my head. I'm like, damn, man, I almost feel like maybe sometimes I make it seem like it's that simple to get back into the building, but it's really not. There's a just physically the parking spot to the front door. That's a challenge in itself. So thank you for sharing. That's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to just recap too. So it sounds like during the golf tournament, when this all started to come on, it sounds like you weren't really sleeping that much, maybe some irritability, some confusion. So it sounds like maybe this was a manic episode with psychotic features. Is that what you were told? Okay.
Yes, that's what I was told, is that I basically was having mania and with psychotic features, and the stress was so great with everything that was going on, from my brother going to college, my cat died, from going to my senior year thinking about college, golf team was new. I had a lot going on, and that can be a big trigger, is like doing a lot of stuff and doing a lot of new things can get too much stress, and it builds up and overflows.
Absolutely. That's why we talk about the two-hit hypothesis in mental health, is that there are genetic predispositions that make you more likely to have these things, but it's the stressors that bring them on, really. And what you were describing with the confusion and not knowing what was going on, that almost sounded like disorganized thought and disorganized speech to me, which is the official like symptom of psychosis that doctors are looking for. So yeah, you had it, man. You had a lot.
Yeah, I had it all. Like I remember, I still do it a little bit, where it's like there's disorganized like speech, like you talk too fast, or you don't know where you're going with something, and it flickers sometimes, but the medication helps tremendously. So that's why I'm still doing so well, is that I want to do better, and just other good things for mental health, like exercise and stuff like that. So
you anytime medication gets brought up on the show, I always maybe not physically, but like my mind looks straight to Justin, because I have no idea when it comes to meds. But I guess I want to hear a little more of like what has the medication management journey been like for you? Like, you've already mentioned a few meds, like this worked for a little bit, this kind of made me this way. Like, how has that medication management been for you? I know bipolar is definitely one of the diagnoses where meds is huge. Like, meds are very important. So what has that been like for you?
It's not been easy. In the hospital, I'll start from there. Like, in the hospital, I really want to take those meds. Yeah. I was like, yep, give it to me. I never was like, nah, I'm not feeling that. I knew they helped, and I kept taking them, kept doing it, and then I had a few times where I was in college and after college that I just didn't feel like I wanted to take them anymore. I was like, I'm feeling good right now. In the moment, I'm feeling great. But when I stopped taking them for a week or two, it really went downhill for a sec. And it wasn't the stature of like going downhill like I was going to have a psychotic episode. It was like I was getting super irritable, my speech was slurred, I wasn't feeling like myself again. I was like, oh wait, I'm not taking my meds right now, aren't I? Yeah. And so being independent adult is hard when you have bipolar. It's like you're always trying to manage a lot of stuff and throw meds on top of that, and going to your psychiatric appointments, going to your counselor appointments, and like wanting to play disc golf, wanting to go to work. You know, it's a lot going on. So it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah, and man, thank you for opening up and talking about this stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is sometimes even an element of withdrawing from your medicines that can make you even more irritable than your baseline, because your body gets so used to those things that if you take them all away at once, it just makes things a lot worse. You were also on some medicines that you mentioned that have some serious side effects, like weight gain. Especially the olanzapine Zyprexa is one that we associate with a ton of weight gain. Depakote has a ton of weight gain too. Like, what are some of the side effects that you have had because of these medicines?
Yeah, weight gain was my number one. I was probably around 180 200 when I was first really sick, and then to now my highest was 315. I really went up in weight, and not to say my diet isn't the best, but I disc golf and I am very, very into exercising, and I was looking at myself and I'm like, why isn't this shedding weight? Like, why is this not going away? Yeah. And so it was and that's one of the key factors of me like not wanting to take meds, is like, I look big. I don't want to look big. Yeah. I'm not going to take these for a little bit so I lose some weight. And like, that stinks. That sucks. It's like I just want to like be able to lose weight like everybody else, but I have to take a med. It's like, ugh. But I will say now I have got down to 292 with landscaping job that is started, and it has helped tremendously with my mental health too. Just being able to like be outside all day and swing some shovels and do stuff like that. I'm on the gardening side, and it's really cool. Yeah.
Nice. Good for you. I know Justin's excited about that outside part. We talk a lot about the getting outside and being active, and like I'm glad to hear that's because it doesn't feel fair, like to have to choose like one or the other. Like if this medication is going to help me out, but then there is side effects. We talk about how, like, I think we're the only country that allows, maybe not the only country, but we have medications you're allowed to have commercials for it, and they'll do the commercials and they make these medications sound amazing and everyone's dancing and high-fiving, but then at the end you have the person who like speed reads all the side effects. You're like, fuck man, like to make me choose, that feels unfair.
Oh yeah, definitely unfair. And I have to keep reminding myself that I don't want to be in that spot again of not knowing where I am. So I kind of choose the med. And I don't like saying that either, because it's like, I don't want to choose the med. I want to just be okay with it. And I'm just like, it's okay to take it. It's there. And it's not me. I am not the Depakote. I am not the lithium. I'm Isaac. I'm not that thing. I'm not bipolar either. Yeah. That's the other thing. People the stigma, like, oh, he has bipolar, so that's him. Yeah. Not true. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I was telling Justin before we started recording, I'm giving a training tomorrow on it's called Youth Mental Health First Aid, and it's just helping like teach anybody who's in contact with, they have an adult version too, but just anyone who's basically in contact with people, how to work through any kind of crisis or how to be a support. And one of the sections I'm talking about tomorrow is like person-centered or strengths-based language, and not just labeling people what their diagnosis is and not just focusing on that, because you're right, like it's something you've experienced, it's something that's a part of you, but it doesn't describe all of you. We've already talked about all the other things that you engage in and that you like to do and that are a part of you. Bipolar is just a small piece out of the whole puzzle that makes you up, that makes up Isaac and makes up stakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's me.
I wanted to ask a little bit. I know my perspective has changed in the different jobs I've had in my career, and first job being in really on a crisis team and going to the hospitals and just kind of seeing like the medical side of it. Like, what was your experience like in the hospital, like the visits? And then this might be a big question, but feel free to answer in the best way possible. But did it change your perspective at all of like our healthcare system, healthcare services? It's one thing to know about them, but it's also another thing to have to live through it. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, I didn't really have much knowledge before going into a mental hospital, like what it was like. I remember being like, oh, this must be like a psych ward, and that kind of that word is one that I relate to of like not great. I didn't like using it, but I was in a place where I didn't really know where I was. Yeah. I wouldn't say I had anything that was like bad to say about the health system, but it definitely is so eye-opening when you're there. And from, I'll say it like this, is that when I was there and I really knew who I was, where I was, what was going on, I noticed like more like when somebody else was in crisis and what was happening for them, I noticed they really handled it pretty well. I think these people that are working in these type of scenarios are lifesavers. I mean, it's such a hard job. I can't imagine, I was out there pacing around a room for hours at a time, and they had to just keep reminding me, you are safe, you are a good person, you are not, you are a good person. And just the repetitiveness got to be so hard. So yeah.
I had a question. Yeah, you mentioned that you didn't really know much about mental health before all of this. Do you think that if you would have known more about bipolar disorder going into it, in the moment you would have had more idea of like, oh, this seems like maybe I'm having like manic symptoms or would that have been too hard with what was going on?
It's funny. I would say it was a week before school, I went to my mom and I think, Mom, I think I'm depressed. And I didn't really know like if that was true or not and what was going on, and I think if I was educated in school better for just what mental health really can look like for people, maybe I would have known. And it was so sudden though that I don't know if it would have helped, because it was a flick of a switch. It was one day I was feeling okay, and the next day I was feeling like I was not okay at all. So I don't know. I don't know if it really would have helped.
Yeah. I also wondered too. I've had experience with working with an individual who's like in the middle of a manic episode, and like I think to be on the other side of it, like I was almost so like taken aback as to what was happening, and like trying to like keep everything straight of like what they were telling me and like where they were at, like thought process wise, that it took me a little bit to understand like, oh shoot, like this is a manic episode. And it wasn't like a right away thing. So even though we have like, I guess the extra education about it, or we should be the quote experts about it, still in the moment it wasn't something that was super like, oh, that's exactly what it is. It still took a little bit. So it's hard. Even if you don't know until you know, but then you don't know when you do know. Like it's just this is like cycle.
Oh yeah.
And then, was there anyone in your family that had a history of bipolar? Because it can be somewhat of a genetic thing. And sorry to maybe, if it's too personal of a question, you certainly don't have to answer.
No, that's fine. Both of my grandmothers on my dad and mom's side, one of them had bipolar. Yeah. On my mom's side. The other side, when my dad was probably about just getting into college, I think that was the timeline, she got dementia, and she had stuff like that. So both have passed on now, but I didn't know that there was some mental health stuff going on in the family, and that's what was said early on. I remember the first visit to the urgent care was like, yeah, we have dementia on one side, bipolar on the other, and so maybe it's something like that. So I remember that coming up a couple times.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting the fact that it can be genetic. I actually just went to a good grand rounds on bipolar disorder, and they were arguing that a lot of times if you're in a manic episode, if you do have that ton of energy, you feel really good about yourself, and you may even be feeling hypersexual, you're more likely to have a kid and pass those genes down. So the genetic aspect of it is kind of fascinating to me, especially because you're more likely to, especially for women with bipolar, you're more likely to have a manic episode in a time that would have like healthier babies, like the babies would be born in springtime. So just to give some extra information on how we see this as always a bad thing. We kind of see this as a disease, but from an evolutionary standpoint, sometimes it is an advantage for people to have some of these things. But living in the modern world with these things can be really tough. And so my next question is, did you ever have any other manic episodes or any other psychotic episodes after that first big one?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I want to say like small manic episodes here and there, but I like to say they're subdued from the medication and other good practices. It's funny, like when you have a manic episode, dang, does it feel good for a little bit? Like it's like I feel good. That, like I'm gonna go play golf. I'm going to work. I've got an apartment. I have a fiance. You feel these feels, and it's like, oh, I'm good. But then when it goes off, and it's like not good, and you feel depressed. So, yeah, I've never had one that lasts more than a week of like depressive episodes, and then I'll have like maybe one that'll last out like 2 or 3 days of mania. I see it as like a schedule of 2 or 3 days of manic, and then 2 to 3 days of depressive, and so that's basically bipolar 2. I believe that would be that. Yeah. So in a way, it's like, well, that is probably it, and I look at it as I'm having a manic episode. And when I do that, and I feel like, oh, it's kind of like I hit the wall for a little bit. I'm like, dang it happened again. But it's good to realize it and put the nail on it a little bit. So.
Oh yeah. It's got to feel like almost empowering to like know if it's coming on, you're like, okay, I know exactly what this is. Like I can handle this. Whereas like the very first time you're like, what the fuck is happening? Like this is like So that's really hopeful to hear. I mean, for anybody who's listening who might have experienced something like this before and are afraid like another romantic episode may happen, just for people's general knowledge, that is really helpful and hopeful to hear about.
Yeah, ride the wave. I really believe in that. Like, there's only so much. Well, there is only so much medication you can take. There's only so much good practice you can do. But when you get to that spot where you feel a little manic, be like, all right, I'm manic right now, and it's good to tell your spouse or tell somebody, I feel a little bit of manic going on right now, and then maybe you can digest it from there. Don't just keep it all inside, because if you do, that's when it gets really bad. Is when you don't tell somebody. That was the number one thing a lot of people tell me in the field, is that you told people when you didn't feel good. A lot of people don't tell people when they don't feel good, and that can be very crucial. So yeah. You talk about it a little bit with the telling people, and you've mentioned it with your parents always being there for you when you were in the hospital, and bless them. That's awesome that they were able to do that for you. How did this impact your relationship with like friends and family? How was that experience for you and from their perspective? Yeah, we only told about 2 of my close friends when I wasn't in high school for 2 months what was going on. We didn't want to tell, the student body, like, Isaac's out because he's in a mental hospital. Yeah. I mean, that just doesn't really go well. Yeah. So I didn't tell many people. I got letters. Oh, that's another thing. I got letters all the time from people in the hospital. I was the one that always had mail. They're like, man, you always get mail. Somebody on the table saying, like, yeah, it's cool. I didn't really know what was going on. I'm opening these things, like, all right, that's cool. All right. And they're like, that's really cool, dude. You got a lot of mail. I'm like, all right, whatever. So, yeah, I got a lot of mail, and that was cool, but I didn't know what was going on. And all right, that's totally cool. But with my friends, they were 100% supportive. Yeah. They were, knowing that I was going through a tough patch, whatever it may be, they were there for me. I remember going back to school, and one of my friends said, dude, you only missed 2 months of homework. You're all right. That's really funny. I was like, yes. I didn't really know how to respond to it. And so that was pretty hilarious. But, my parents were always there for me. They visited every day. We talked about sports. We talked about anything, that was going on. I was always excited to see him. That was like my number one thing. It was just like, when my parents coming in. So the bond is still there. I call my mom all the time. Still, I'm able to I can vent to them whenever I need to, which is amazing.
Cool.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
Mm-hmm. Are you open with people with the fact that you have bipolar? Like, you're on the show, you're talking about it, but in your personal life, like, are you like, do you tell anyone, or do you still kind of keep it close to the chest, like when it first happened?
A little bit of both. I mean, I feel like I do tell some people I have bipolar, my close friends, but a lot of the time I kind of just say, like, I have a mental health condition I might have to deal with sometimes, and if I'm not at work or something like that, like a boss, I'll talk to him and be like, I like, straight out, when I got hired, I was like, I have a mental health condition that can cause me not to come to work some days, and that's just what's going to happen, if that's okay. So being open and honest about it is very crucial. I don't love saying the word bipolar, because a lot of people go to, like, so you get angry a lot and you get really sad.
I hate that.
No, that's not how it works. Not good. So I don't use the word a lot, but I do describe that I have a mental health condition. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you brought up a great point that we have mentioned on this show before, that a lot of times society thinks bipolar disorder is you just get angry easily, but that is not it. Medically speaking, that is not bipolar. That's actually more along the lines of like borderline personality disorder and having like a hyperactive amygdala, that part of your brain that controls that anger. So there's a reason why people are that way, but what society thinks bipolar is completely wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, Isaac, this has been cool. Thank you. I really appreciate it. This is I think we can only say so much. Like, we can only share so much experience. So to hear like your real life experience, to hear that you're doing well and thriving and doing the best that you can, and there's a lot of improvements since then, and being able to do that and take care of yourself. I mean, that's great. And I think I really hope that at least one person is able to hear this and relate to it and be like, okay, I can do it because Stakes is telling me I can do it.
Absolutely. Forward the stakes. It's so true. I mean, if you apply yourself and you want to get better, you will get better. And if as long as you put in that effort, and it might feel like you're putting in zero effort, but if you put on those 2 socks in the morning, you get dressed, that's effort. You know, some days it's all you can do. It just depends. I mean, some days you feel like you've just ran a marathon the day before and you're just pooped, but you just know you can put in that little bit of effort, and you know you're trying, then you'll get better. So, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we have we're getting towards the end of the episode. Sorry, I think my dog is like ripping up a toy outside, and I thought someone was knocking on the door, so I was like, what's going on right now? But I think I love the phrase that you have. If you apply yourself and you believe that you can get better, you'll get better. That's so cool. That's so important. It's made such an impact in your life. Any other parting words that you have for anyone who might be struggling with bipolar disorder or any mental health disorder in general? Like, what would you tell them?
Be open to the ones you love about what's going on for you. Don't feel ashamed about what's happening. I tell my fiancé Ariana every morning usually how I'm feeling. And if I don't feel good, I tell her. I want to make sure she knows that I'm going through it right now. She's always a text away. I give a lot of credit to Ariana. It is not easy being in a relationship with somebody that has a very tough mental health condition. I don't say that a lot, but it's just so true. I mean, it's not easy, but she loves me to death, and I love her to death, and we're going to get married September 2nd, and it's going to be just peaches and roses. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. There is always somebody for you in this world, even if you have a diagnosis, and it's not, doesn't mean that's who you are. It doesn't mean that's who you're going to be. That's just a little something maybe on your shoulder you can just get away for a little bit if you really need to. Just forget about it for a sec. Find that thing that you love to do, like disc golf. Find somebody that can call you an awesome nickname like Stakes, like the whole state of Maine that is that calls me Stakes. It's hilarious you guys said that, because I'm like, how am I going to introduce like them that my nickname is Stakes? And the first thing you say, oh, Stakes. I'm like, oh, that's perfect. So that broke that ice very fast. I'll leave it at that. Just be yourself and know that you are loved, and just keep going, keep trucking. So thank you.
Cool.
We're ending it on that. We can't say it any better.
Perfect.
Thank you, Isaac. We appreciate you. Congrats in less than 3 months on your marriage. Shout out Ariana for being such a support for you. I'll say one more time, thank you to Unplug Tech for sponsoring today's episode. Isaac, our boy Stakes, you're a friend of the show now. Thank you so much for being a listener. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Justin, I'll play us out. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. If you feel so inclined to do so, please feel free to leave a 5-star review. On Apple Podcasts, you can also leave a comment. You can find us on social media on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, at Millennial MHC. Thank you all for listening. Thank you again to Isaac for being such a great guest, for being able to share his story. And as always, take care of y'all mentals.